Welcome back, everybody, to the official podcast of the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office, Patrolling in Paradise. My name is Gabriella Ruiz, Public Information Officer here at CCSO, and today is a more serious tone, and I am joined by two detectives who I will definitely allow to introduce themselves because they both come from very impressive backgrounds.
So my name is Don Wolke. I'm currently assigned with the Major Crimes Unit. Prior to that, I was assigned to the FBI Task Force where we handled child exploitation investigations. I was there for 13 years. Now I'm back in Major Crimes, but we are still maintaining that relationship with the FBI and still combating child exploitation here in the community.
I'm Detective John Smith with the agency's Juvenile Intervention Unit. We fall underneath Intel, and we try to find ways to get the children out of trouble and precursors that get them in trouble, and make sure that we educate the families before they get in that point.
So, as I mentioned, our conversation today is a little bit more serious, and as parents, it is terrifying when we think of our children and the internet. And I know you two see it on a far more in-depth level than I do, or anybody else for that matter. And it's scary because you don't know where to start. You don't know what to allow and what not to allow. And you think, oh, you know, my kids' friends are playing on this video game, so it must be safe. And it becomes almost overwhelming. So I definitely want to turn the floor over to you guys to open that conversation, and where do we begin?
So I think the most important thing as a parent is to keep that open communication with your child. I have 3 boys of my own. John, do you have any?
I have 2 biological and 2 adopted.
Okay. So everybody here has children. So I think what you need to do is it's almost like having that fine line of, you know, maybe being their friend on one end, but also being a parent and being there for them at all times, making sure that they feel comfortable coming to them with anything. Because once you are online, whether it's your phone, your tablet, your computer, even a gaming system, they're going to come across some really bad people. Mm-hmm. I've been doing this for a very long time, worked a lot of cases, and unless you want to have that open communication where they don't feel like they're going to get in trouble, so they know that they can come to them and say, hey, Mom, hey, Dad, you know, this is what just happened, or this is what I'm going through and I need help, instead of feeling, okay, if I tell them something is going on, I'm going to get, you know, in trouble, or I'm going to get all of my electronics taken away from me. So it's very important to keep that open communication with your kid.
Mm-hmm. There's definitely that element, like you said, of that fine line of, okay, I'm here for you and I want you to feel comfortable speaking to me, but I'm also mom or I'm also dad, you know. There has to be that happy medium. And a lot of times with parents, you know, we see these games that have really, they're innocent in nature, but they have access to that online chat or that online platform where they can play with people who knows where, globally. And that's where, you know, sometimes a little bit more research on the parents' end is required, but that alone can be a scarier aspect of it because you don't know who your kid's talking to.
So I actually follow Tim Tebow. He's one of my favorite people to follow. He's actually very much into combating child exploitation. I don't know if you've seen some of those videos.
Yes, sir.
One of the latest ones that I actually posted on my Facebook was when you give a child an electronic device, a phone, a tablet, a computer, a gaming system, you're basically putting them in a playground by themselves with a bunch of pedophiles. And that when I heard him say that is really, that's very true. Because unless you're there with them 24/7, which you're not going to be, I've worked so many cases that I would never imagine that child exploitation material would be on their platform but it is. And I think all of these people that are going after children, they're going to use everything and anything to do that.
No
Wow.
platform is safe.
No, I've worked cases using Pinterest, and I thought that was for cooking recipes and art, but I've worked cases from Pinterest.
Oh my goodness. My child is far from the video game age, but it's that just sent like the most gut-wrenching feeling when you said that, of the thought of giving something that's supposed to be innocent, a fun game. It's a rainy day, play a video game with your friends. You think you're okay, but that is probably the most real example that I've ever heard, certainly, of just the dangers of the online platform and people that are out there to take advantage of your child. Now, Detective Smith, I want to talk to you about something that you brought to my attention, actually both of you brought to my attention, and that is this 764 network. And forgive me because I really know nothing about it, but I know that kind of coincides with this online and keeping our children safe from all platforms.
When I got involved at the Juvenile Intervention Unit, I started looking into mainly things to help protect the juveniles, not just of Charlotte County, but everywhere. And then Detective Wilkie, I've known him since 2001 in other aspects of law enforcement. And I knew with his experience and education, also with the FBI, that he had a lot more access to certain things like the 764 than I ever have. And the best thing for someone like myself to do is just connect with people who know way more than I do, in order for me to constantly educate myself. And when it comes to the actual 764, I'm going to allow Detective here to explain what they're actually about.
So I don't think it's really appropriate here on the podcast to really go in depth with it. I would say let the parents and the people out there research it. It's on Google. Okay. I mean, really go online
Right.
and type in 764 and you will find out what it is, because it is probably one of the most horrific things that are happening with children. They are groups. They're groups of people who believe to promote kids to harm themselves. That's about the most polite way that I can put it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that the public do their research, type that in. There's plenty of material that they'll come across.
Now, I bring it up simply because of that. It's any online platform, any place where you, like you said, you allow your child to have this access, if you will. They could be opened up to these types of networks. They could be opened up to pedophiles, people trying to take advantage of them. I know you've probably seen hundreds of cases where they lure the child in, they befriend them, they act like they're another child themselves,
Yes.
and then one thing leads to another, and next thing you know, the child's in a situation that is just horrific to think about.
And that's how the video games work. Is there's certain video games like V-Bucks, stuff to buy certain things like skins, weapons and stuff on one of the platforms. I believe is V-Bucks. Is that Fortnite? Or is that Roblox?
Roblox?
It's one of them.
Roblox.
That sounds familiar. Yeah.
So they think they're talking to a child, and then so it's almost like they're asking for certain pictures, inappropriate pictures, in exchange for V-Bucks, and they think they are truly talking to a child. But in reality, after that image or video has been sent, then soon to find out it's actually an adult, and then at that point, it's like a snowball, because now it's like, okay, if you don't give me more, then I'm going to put this out. I'm going to tell your parents. I'm going to expose you. And then that puts fear in their mind that if they don't follow their instructions, it's going to get worse. So they do. And then that's when it really gets worse, because they basically fall down this rabbit hole. And it's very hard to get out, because, one image now versus say now it's up to 50. That's not good. That's where the trying to be comfortable with your parents and telling them this is what just happened. This is what I just did. I'm so sorry. At least the parents can get involved and educate them teach them about internet safety and be involved in their kids' lives, but don't reprimand them. Don't make them feel like they are in the wrong. That would be my suggestion.
Right, because and on the kids side of things, you know, they log on to play an innocent video game, you know, skins and different weapons and all the fun stuff that these games were designed to be. They were designed to be fun for kids. And then next thing you know, they're in that rabbit hole and they are really being exploited. They're being put in a situation where it's, if you don't continue, then I'm gonna, you know, you're gonna be in trouble. I mean, that, again, it just gives you the most sickening feeling of people out there trying to do this and take advantage of children.
Absolutely. And one of the things as a parent, you need to pay attention to what your child's doing. Because as Detective here just mentioned, Roblox, Pinterest earlier, and then you've also got Discord, Instagram, Minecraft, any mobile app, because most of these kids have their own little iPads or some type of computer or phone that they're playing with. There's access there. And once they have access, you need to pay attention to how your child progresses with that particular game. If you start noticing them turning away, it's a red flag when you're looking at them, or you ask them, what are they doing? Nothing. They turn it off and you don't get to see what they're on there. Focus and pay attention to what your child is doing, because it's what you don't know what your child is doing is what's going to really hurt in the long run.
And that's also, to touch on that, so that's where earlier that I said there's like a fine line between a parent and, you know, a friend that they know that they can come to, but also they need to be a parent. They need to get, you know, you're the parent, you're the one that's paid for that device, you're the one that's paying for the monthly service. Go through their phone. I mean, really, that's what it takes is, you know, they don't really have privacy. They're a child. So my suggestion is that, and then I did it with my kids, I would periodically just say, let me see your phone, let me see your tablet, and I would just go through every single thing that I could think of just to make sure that they are safe or that they weren't doing anything inappropriate. So I would highly suggest parents to do the same thing, is to, I get jobs are very demanding, and I mean, I think our jobs are very demanding, where sometimes when I go home, I just want to just be away and just relax and not really I don't really care to talk to anybody, but you can't let that be an everyday occurrence. So I would suggest to try to get, you know, just, hey, let me see your phone, let me see this, go through it, and don't take things for granted. I've seen apps, and I'm sure you have too, where I could download a calculator app right now, and it's really not a calculator, it's actually a hidden folder. So I could take some of my photos and actually slide them into this calculator, and it's really not a calculator, it's just a folder that you can put things in. So even though it says what it is, I would be just clicking on every single thing.
And making sure that, yeah, absolutely. And I guess that brings a question to mind as a parent. Where do you go beyond that with these games? Do you not allow your child to have the games?
I limited mine to their friends only. So people that they were in school with, played baseball with, you know, I didn't want them to be playing with people around the world that I have no idea who they are.
Yeah. And that's the stance I would take as well, because you're opening them up to God only knows what. And there are that playground image that you gave earlier is just sitting with me, and it's the most sickening feeling to think that you give this to your child to have fun, and there's people out there that, ugh.
And it's amazing how a lot of these apps are so sexual in nature. I actually have TikTok, and I pulled up TikTok the other day, and I'm just kind of like scrolling through a few, and just the stuff you see on this, I'm just like, wow. I don't understand how some of this stuff can get on there, but as a parent, knowing, you know, say a 10-year-old or 11-year-old child might have TikTok, and to see all that is just kind of amazing that it's on there to begin with.
Yeah, social media is a major part of what I do. It's part of my job, and of course, on a personal level, I have social media accounts, and I kind of grew up in that day and age where, you know, when I was younger, social media wasn't a thing, but as I got older, it was really the start of where we are today. And while I appreciate social media and I see the benefits of it, it is a terrifying thing when it comes to children.
Well, for our generation, we didn't even have internet. And with access to anything from one side of the world to another in a matter of seconds, and to have somebody get a hold of you and lure you into doing certain things, I've always had a mindset that perception is bigger than reality. If you perceive something is wrong, check it out. Because the reality is there may not be or there may be. But if you don't check to find out, then it could go bad.
And I've worked a lot of cases where that's actually how it started. Child may be acting a little bit differently. They're on their phone. Parent reaches over, grabs it, looks at it, and there it is. It's right there. So, I mean, so yes, you got to look for the behavior change, the silent treatment, just anything that's just very odd. I mean, you know your child. So if you see something odd, that should throw a little bit of a red flag to be cautious and look for something.
Now, does this go beyond, because, of course, kids have friends, and they may go over to their friend's house, and the friend has access to the game. How do you mitigate some of that?
I would tell, make sure that, whenever you establish a really good relationship with your child, you need to make them feel comfortable that, hey, if you see, little Johnny or little Susie in a situation, please let us know. I mean, so, I know that there's always a little friendship, don't say anything. You're my friend, don't, get me in trouble, but they need to feel, they need to know what is right versus wrong. And if they see something, hear something, then they should be able to feel comfortable coming to their parent and saying, hey, it's not me, it's my friend. That way, at least somebody knows something that's going on.
Absolutely. And I've heard several parents growing up and in my lifetime that say, know your kids' friends, but also know your kids' friends' parents as well.
Absolutely.
You don't just want to be sending your kid over to some random kid's house without knowing where they're going, the environment, because that's a whole nother can of worms if you don't know. And kids will be kids. I hate to use that phrase, but just like you said, don't tell, it's a secret. They want to hide. But when it comes to something like this, you have to break that barrier. You have to know who your kids are talking to, know what they're involved in, and really have a good grip on their devices, their social media, et cetera. Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit more about the juvenile unit and really what you do to kind of mitigate some of these, like you mentioned earlier, mitigate some of these
Absolutely
instances.
What our unit does is we correspond with the DJJ, Department of Juvenile Justice, and then their probation. So all the children that come through our system, legal system, we find out, okay, is this your first time coming through our system, or have you been here multiple times? Either way, we want to get a hold of the family members and let them make sure that they're aware of what their child is doing, not what they're telling you, but what they're actually doing, and see if we can't get counseling. Well, the biggest thing is really counseling and understanding the difference between right and wrong. But we don't want to always get them through our court systems, because once you get into the system, you get enough points, which is a graduated system, and you go into a place called Department of Juvenile, or DOJ. Well, now you're meeting other kids in the same situation, and you're learning new ways of doing things. So what we try to do is get with them and possibly do civil citations, and then you go through the programs, and you graduate, and then you move on. Don't let a particular moment of your life dictate the future that you're going to have.
Right.
So we all have made mistakes. We're all going to make mistakes, but we're not going to dwell and live on that. But as a juvenile, a lot of times we sit on that and we think, my life is over. And then they start getting down, and they get online, and then they find someone who's going to listen to them, and then we're back in this situation again because someone's now prowling over them as a predator and tell them what they need to hear, or tell them how horrible they are, and just get them to open up to the wrong people. So that's why it's important. We try to educate the parents to be part of the kids. Our agency is part of the kids. We want the families and parents and anybody to be part of the kids as well, so we don't end up with them being a victim from the predators.
That vulnerability, it's so real because, kids they're so moldable and they're learning, they're growing, and truthfully, they aren't going to reach that full maturity level where they understand the complex things that adults do for years, some into their 20s, I believe it is. So in this adolescent time frame where, they can meet people online and become victims, it's so critical to, like you said, have that intervention period, because again, it's that sickening feeling of people out there are wanting to take advantage of children. And if it's not your child, it's just going to be the next one. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. The next one that's there on the platform. So intervening at an early stage and getting them access to that counseling and that really bringing that family together as a whole, that's critical in this conversation as well.
Absolutely, 100%. But here you are with us at the agency, and you're learning of some of these things as now. And I know you're a mother of children. Imagine those who just know nothing, have no access to anyone with law enforcement. And that's why we want to make sure we get that word out there so people understand, hey, the world's not full of unicorns and Skittles.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that is so true. I work in the agency and I can sit down and have conversations with you guys and learn about this stuff. But for people that are listening or watching that have young kids at home, it's an eye opener. It's terrifying, but it is an eye opener. Detective Wilkie, can you tell me a little bit about what Major Crimes is doing to kind of combat this as a whole?
Well, since I've when I was down at the office, at the FBI office, we started getting some major crimes investigators who were interested in working this crime. So we are also part of the ICAC, which is Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. It's based out of Broward County, but just in simple terms, basically all of those ESPs, the electronic service providers, that's your Snapchat, your Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all that, they are mandated reporters for any type of child exploitation material on their platform. So they report directly to NCMEC, which is the National Centers of Missing and Exploited Children, and then they in return make a report, and then they send it to the ICAC task force in Broward County, and then they disseminate it to the proper jurisdiction. So we are part of that. So now that I'm back, I'm trying to kind of educate and teach the unit, whoever would like to work this type of violation. It is not easy. It's not anything that you would love to look at, but we're trying to expand on that and trying to have more people work in this type of crime. And then also, as I said earlier, we do have another detective who went down there and is still, going strong with the FBI task force with the child exploitation material. So I appreciate the sheriff, seeing the importance of this, having, kids need a voice, and this crime is only going to rise because, we see every once in a while a platform being taken down, but, one platform could be taken down but 3 pop up. So they're always, every time I get a case that comes to me, there's some that I've never even heard of, and didn't even realize that one is even a thing. And also to circle back to some things that we've said about, things to look at, YouTube is big. I know we want to kind of focus on, now that kids are out of school, they have a lot of their time on their hands. Mm-hmm. Parents are at school. I get a lot on YouTube. And I know that sounds odd, but
it does.
Yes, kids love doing something very inappropriate. And then for some reason they decide that it's fun to upload it to YouTube. And again, as I said earlier, they're mandated reporters. So what do? They report that material. It's not a crime. They're just being stupid. They're being stupid online. So that becomes more or less an educational moment. But also keep in mind, we're now taking time to figure out who this person is when we need to go after the predators versus a child being stupid online. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, but we want to make sure that, we don't take it for granted. Like, okay, that's not a big deal. It is a big deal because that's usually where it starts. So we still have to do the legwork, still have to identify the child and the parents. And then I always try to go out and talk to the parents. Like, it's basically an educational moment at that point, kind of like what we're doing here. Letting them know what their child did, some recommendations. And I've had the privilege to speak at different places. I've spoke at FGCU, churches, homeowners associations. I did a podcast as well a couple of years ago. So it's always good to get this information out because apps that you really don't think, and I never thought YouTube would be an issue, but it's just because the kids have so much time on their hands, they just decide to do something and upload it.
So I want to circle back to kind of what we were talking about earlier with parents and really where to begin, because, I know you mentioned that parents to, go through the phones and really be aware of what your children are a part of. But are there specific apps or specific programs that really just altogether is a red flag, avoid, do not let your child have them?
I do not like Discord. Discord is probably on the top of the list. What do you think? I'm thinking like Snapchat and Kick.
The problem is, my opinion is, know what your kid is involved with, period. It doesn't matter if it goes from Discord to Roblox. Kick, I know when it first came out, I have a mentally challenged son that I adopted, and he was targeted when it first came out. And I did not have any idea that there wasn't even an app called Kick.
Oh my.
And like Detective Wilkie was saying earlier, as soon as you turn off one app access, well, now they've got access to another app. And the problem is with all these new updates that are constantly coming up on all of our phones all the time, what does it do? It opens up a whole new array of different apps. Again, none of us have even heard of these things because they're new apps that are getting marketed to the phones, and we don't even know about them yet.
Right. And I mean, like iPhone, I know they have like in the photo section, you can hide photos and it requires like Face ID or passcode. I mean, these phones are really, they're like Pandora's box. You have to, as a parent, you think you're ahead of the game, but then something else pops up. Are there any other apps you said?
Yeah, I would say Discord is the number one. And if you're allowed to post something with this podcast, I can actually provide you, and it's actually, you can Google it. It actually gives you like the top apps to avoid.
Absolutely, yeah.
Discord is one, of course, Kick and Snapchat. And because I think at Snapchat, there's actually a secret in there called For Your Eyes Only. So if you don't know where to go to look for that, and as a parent, usually they don't, you're going to miss that. So I would suggest, those would be my top ones. And a lot of them, unfortunately, are not law enforcement friendly. We'll serve the search warrant. We'll ask for certain material. They are required, of course, to give it back, but it's not pretty. It's just so much to look at and trying to decipher it. It's just all over the place. So they have followed their rules. They have followed the law, to report it, but they don't make it easy for us. So, so a lot of that time really takes to sit down and just try to analyze it and figure out where these messages are going and in chronological order, if that makes sense. It's not pretty.
Yeah. And I mean, as a parent, if you think, oh my goodness, my kid has Discord or Kick or whatever they are, and we can certainly post that link when this podcast gets posted. Delete it right away, get rid of it, and that alone, because kids don't like when their technology is taken away from them. That might make you the bad guy, but in the grand scheme of things, I think when we all get older, we say to our parents, "Oh, you were right. I know what you were doing now," or when you become a parent yourself, you realize it. So unfortunately, it may require some parents out there to be the bad guy, take away some of the access to these apps and things, and start now. Even if you haven't started, start that conversation and say, hey, moving forward, for your safety, you may not like it, but this is what's going to happen. And I'm doing this not because I want to ruin your life or be involved in your privacy or your conversations or whatever you want to call it. I'm doing this to protect you. Yeah. And that goes across for all ages. And I'm sure that conversation looks different for each age range, but it's something that has to happen. And it's critical for your child's safety.
It's a lot of, I get amazed sometimes when kids actually get a phone. I mean, I think my boys had it in middle school, and that was literally because, unfortunately, the school shootings that were happening. I just felt like they needed something just in case. But I've seen kids just in elementary school already having, phones. So it's just given, again, going back to that Tim Tebow analogy, it just like, again, you're handing this device that is so powerful, but is so evil at the same time.
Yeah. I remember when I was growing up, I got a phone because I started playing sports after school. And so I was able to, it was just calling. I didn't have texting. And then, of course, it progresses to, then I had texting. But social media actually access on the phone didn't come until later. And I think I was in probably late middle school, early high school when that was really starting to grow. And now I look at kids, like you mentioned, they're in like 4th and 5th grade and they've got cell phones with full access to all this stuff. And it's really terrifying to think about. And like I said earlier, if you haven't had that conversation with your kids, you've got to start now, because it's a matter of their safety. And as parents, it's our responsibility.
And the thing is that sometimes people just think it's just a simple, innocent cell phone, and it's called a cell phone, but in reality, it's so powerful. It's literally a computer. It really is. I mean, you can get online, you can email. I mean, everything that you can do on a computer, I would think that you could do on a phone.
Yeah, you can.
I don't even have a personal computer. I do everything on my personal phone.
Yeah, I mean, you can print documents. You can. It really is. I've heard people call it a tiny computer in your pocket, because it really is. Yeah. So if you have a kid that plays after school sports, or they need the phone because, like you mentioned, unfortunately, we live in a day and age where we are afraid of school shootings. Is that something that you give them the phone with limitations? I know there was like a Firefly, I think it was called, when I was growing up, where you can only have 3 contacts. Yes. And I mean, at what level do you go with that?
Well, I think we talked about this. There are, Apple phones are very user friendly. Like they protect the user. It doesn't matter if you're 5 years old or 80 years old, it's going to protect the user. So there's no apps that you can really download to make any kind of adjustments or settings for a kid. There are parental settings you can do manually. You can find those online easily if you just type that in the search box. But Android, and I'm not telling all the parents to go out and buy Android phones, but they actually have an app that is very useful for parents to monitor their kids' activity. So for the Android, it's called Bark, B-A-R-K. And for that app, it will monitor the child's activity and kind of give reports back to the parent of what they're doing, how long they're on it, what apps they're downloading, how long they are on the apps itself. So that would be one of, if you have an Android already, that would be one that I would recommend for a parent to look into. I know on a certain setting for Apple phones, the parent, if it's set up the right way for a child, the parent will get an alert and saying, hey, this person is about to download this app. Are you okay with it? And they actually have to give permission. So there are some certain settings. Apple's just a little bit harder to do to set that up versus like an Android.
Wow. Yeah, that's, like you said, maybe it's not a pitch to go get your kid an Android, but I'm sitting here and thinking if I were in the market to get my kid a cell phone, I would lean in that direction just because of that.
Yeah, one of the things that all of us at the agency want to do is just look for signs. Look for those signs in your kid's behavior. And hopefully you'll be able to get a slide. So I'm going to read through these real quick and to show what to look for
Yeah,
in your
absolutely.
child's behavior. Sudden secrecy online, minimizing screens, deleting messages, switching apps quickly, emotional changes, withdrawal, anxiety, fearfulness, and unexplained distress. New online friends who seem overly attentive, flattering, or intense. Requests for secrecy about conversations or activities. And the big one, unexplained injuries or self-harm is a major red flag.
Yeah.
And I just want that really to get to the people so they understand. Focus on the child. Yes, they can be hit from every accent of the world with their online device, but they can only be protected from within. And if they focus on that information, that just helps them a lot more.
Right.
And I think the parents need to, like, if they're listening to this podcast and they are listening, what signs to look for. It's not like, okay, let's wait until those signs occur. I would say, when you see your child, say, hey, can we sit down and have a talk, and actually just lay it all out, like almost like a fresh slate. Okay. Look, I just listened to this. It's concerning to me. It's brought a lot of things to my attention. I'd like to have a conversation with you and be open back and forth, and start from there. Don't wait for something to happen. Be more proactive than anything.
Right. And that it just circles back to the number one thing is, as a parent, your kid, and you look for those things for sure, but start that conversation now. Even if your kid has all the video games and all the apps and all, it's not too late. Start the conversation, open that door, and moving forward, whether they like it or not, it's a necessity.
Yes.
So I know we've covered a lot, and it's really some gut-wrenching topics that maybe aren't easy to digest, especially as parents, because you don't want to think of your children ever in a vulnerable situation. But it's important and it's critical information. And I thank you both so much for sitting down with me and sharing this with the public, because it is a necessity.
No, I really do appreciate it. I think it's very important to get this information out, especially with the kids being out this summer. And I hope a lot of parents and families listen to this and take what we are saying seriously. And I enjoy getting out there and letting the public know, because a lot of parents are not really too tech savvy. They really don't know what to look for. So I really hope that this open up their eyes to help them, go in that direction, to be a little bit more proactive with their kid.
Absolutely. And like I mentioned, I will definitely make sure when we post this to post those helpful links and information along with it, so that parents have the resources. But as always, I always say call our non-emergency number, 941-639-2101. And if they have questions, they can call and ask us. And we can certainly get them in touch with someone who can get them the help that they need to either start the conversation or really just begin.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much. And I really appreciate your time. And I look forward to really picking your brain more myself, working with you guys and seeing you in the hallways. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Patrolling in Paradise, and we will see you next time.